Today we're talking about class reductionism and why we should stand against it, what it is, and how it only serves to enable the bourgeois class. So, as many of us are aware, the Trump administration recently has been putting out a slew of attacks on social rights. Um, Even degrading the very idea of having basic empathy as part of a DEI or woke culture scam. There have been attacks on bodily autonomy, preventing people from seeking access to abortions and other healthcare. Access to trans healthcare has been under attack. Immigration status has been a very contentious issue. And this has even been extended to kidnappings, and disappearings of people that have been critical on US foreign policy. We have seen decades of struggle of people marching in the streets, decades of struggle that have been undone at the flick of a pen under the Trump regime. This shows the inherent weakness of reform. But not to get distracted with reformism, let's continue on with the divisive attacks that Trump has set on marginalized people. Feels like everyone has always said that now is the worst it's ever been. And maybe there's some truth to that. But regardless, things feel pretty bad right now for a lot of people. The inherent contradictions in capitalism are becoming more pronounced and more obvious. People are worried about their retirements and their savings. People are worried about their jobs and sense of security. The price of groceries and rent keeps going up, but people's salaries are staying the same. Everyone is in a debt crisis with our debt race with capitalism, and most of us are losing that race. Now, these contradictions of capitalism, the moments when capitalism lashes out and hurts people, the bourgeois class will divert the attention of their reactionary forces. They'll say, no, no, you don't understand. It's the gays and the women who are ruining your jobs, and the immigrants want to replace you. But there's no truth or merit in these types of ideas. But due to decades of propagation from reactionary talking heads, there are pockets of people who have actually adopted these beliefs. And they will use selective science, typically backed by their favorite podcast, to justify their own racist, misogynistic, and homophobic views. They provide opposition where there ought not be. They stir up trouble or outright allow aggression towards marginalized people. This can also be seen with liberal pundits discussing the election, blaming the Democrats' loss on people who support Palestine or that care about trans issues. But there are even some leftists who agree, saying that social issues are a waste of time and energy. The correct way to respond to this is, of course, an injury to one is an injury to all of us. That as revolutionary socialists, we must stand against all oppression. Well, except when we're oppressing the bourgeois class, but that's a discussion for a different day. But when people are divided, when the working class gets divided against itself, we need to fight like hell. We understand the struggle for higher wages, for affordable housing and healthcare, but we also recognize that race, gender, age, health, a myriad of other issues also greatly influence the material concerns of every worker. And advocating for these social issues also advocates for worker empowerment. Workers who think that they have nothing to gain in fighting for social issues fail to acknowledge that if you want all workers to fight, you must liberate all workers. How can your fellow workers fight with you if they are still in chains? To reference a letter that Marx wrote in April 1870 to rally English support for Irish emancipation, it is not a question of abstract justice or humanitarian sentiment, but the first condition of their own social emancipation, in that if you help someone else, they will also help you back. You help find your own emancipation through emancipating others. So coming back to the current, attack on what the right likes to call DEI and woke politics, reactionaries have expressed excitement about an end to DEI and woke politics. They're happy to have that buried for now, as it said in tonight's reading by one pundit. But there are also those on the left that take a somewhat half-hearted approach, saying that social issues are important, but we should focus on wider demands of the working class, going as far to say that advocating for social issues are for the more important and elite sections of minority populations. For example, one might advocate to raise everyone's pay instead of ensuring that people of color are being paid fairly. While this first option would also provide a pay raise for people of color, it does not account for an attempt to solve the racial disparity in pay. It's not different from the video that went viral a couple years ago of a man being asked to pick between LGBT plus rights or economic stability. His response was both. While the interviewer prodded him to choose one over the other, still this guy insisted that you could do both, replying, "So what? We can do both." Addressing class and social conditions is possible and should be the goal of revolutionary socialism. Otherwise, how can a worker be emancipated if their social concerns are left unaddressed? Social issues are a part of people's material realities, and they shape all of our lives. In a way, class reductionists are a helpful tool to capitalists. Their arguments arise to bolster aggression already set forth by the capitalists, to bring the party to kneel in decorum and bureaucracy. It provides a convenient scapegoat, for example, when Democrats botched their election in 2024, shoving their lame politicians' loss onto voters and non-voters. So not only did Democrats parade Biden around weekend at Bernie style for half of the election, but the latecomer Kamala promised to be just like Biden, to continue the genocide in Gaza, to quote unquote follow the law if trans rights came under attack by Trump, offered weak ideas of empowering people that were already struggling. Kamala took Biden's already conservative agenda further to the right by bringing the Cheneys into her administration. Not once did she listen to advocates for Palestine, and she has, at best, taken a lackadaisical approach towards trans healthcare and LGBT plus rights. So she lost. She lost because there was hardly any difference between her platform and Trump's. No self-respecting Republican is going to vote for a liberal. Democrats threw this election and they threw it hard. And while we could sit here on this call for hours discussing where the Democrats went wrong, it would be better to use our time to criticize those that would shift blame to the electorate. They claim that contentious or abstaining voters are obsessively voting along identity lines. They blame younger generations for withholding votes for Palestine. They blame extreme and woke policies that never existed or were discussed in any serious matter. In these regards, there is little difference between the bureaucrats and social and there's little difference between bureaucrats and class reductionists. If one's goal is to end US imperialism, standing against the ethno-state of Israel is part of opposing Israel, and ensuring the safety of LGBT plus people, people of color, and immigrants, part of the wider struggle for workers' empowerment. So ensuring, sorry, I wrote that a little wrong. Ensuring the safety for LGBT plus people, people of color, and immigrants is a part of ensuring the wider empowerment of workers. To support the social struggle is to support the wider movement, but to oppose the social movement only serves to alienate and divert some base amongst the wider movement. Class reductionists avoid criticizing the violent structures of capitalism and go straight to blaming identity politics and wokeness. This ignores how diverse the workforce is. To take a line right out of the reading, The working class, and is in all its diversity, lives their not only the fantasy terrain of the purely economic, but rather in the real world, a world driven by radicalized and gendered divisions that are just as real and material as the divisions between workers and bosses. And spending so much time rejecting identity politics, class reductionists provide a smokescreen for bourgeois democracy, perhaps fueling delusions that the Democratic Party can be reformed away from the capitalist state and recaptured to, I don't know, implement some sort of top-down socialist bourgeois state. I don't know what the idea is with that. But instead of smashing the bourgeois state, they are concerned with decorum and civility politics to maintain their own influence within the Democratic Party. But this is futility, as it shows the Democratic Party is where good work goes to die, outlining the futility in trying to achieve anything through the Democrats. When Democrats find an ounce of dignity within themselves and push for somewhat radical reform on social issues, things that are outside of what the bourgeois party wishes for, they are either disciplined by the party or removed entirely. That is how the bourgeois state works. It is not a bug, it is a function. It is working as intended, and it is not intended to empower the working class. One cautionary tale on not addressing social issues. After the Great Depression, the Congress of Industrial Organizations, also called the CIO, was supposed to build and establish anti-racist industrial unionism in the South, but they failed to do so out of lack of priority. This became a major factor for declining labor and the degeneration of its leadership into bureaucracy. We see that it is in not taking a stance on social issues, ended up working to the detriment of workers in the long term. So because they did not focus on social issues, in the long term, they were screwed. Their conception of identity politics is a convenient, if shabbily constructed, straw person. It can be invoked to swallow up any and all reforms of political involvement. No matter how deeply materialist their conceptions of oppression, they don't conform to their strategic model. The Democratic Party should be thought of as reactionary and not progressive. It only seeks to maintain the capitalist state, not to care for the needs of the working class and oppressed people. The capitalist state must lose power, money, resources, etc., if it is to create equality. Equality means losing a lower status class to use, it means gaining equality means losing a lower status class to use as a scapegoat for economic troubles, troubles that are actually created by capitalism, not marginalized people. Instead of uprooting social disparities, class reductionists would focus on winning broader social programs. Why would socialists be so picky when fighting against bourgeois democracy? Where is the solidarity that makes a mass strike of workers possible? They're not serious when creating a mass disruptive struggle because they choose not to fight against the forces that divide workers. To quote this block near the end of our reading tonight, Donald Trump's recent barrage of executive orders, which have targeted workers, immigrants, queer and trans folks, women, and those who are racially oppressed, give lie to the fact that struggles against oppression can either be tabled in favor of class-wide demands or somehow fought indirectly. Trump's election is the result not only of the failure of the Democratic Party, but also the disorganization of the US left, which wouldn't bring itself to offer any meaningful alternative. After years of capitulation and self-subordination, the left must reject calls to work within the capitalist state and its supposedly progressive party, the Democrats, and start building meaningful and militant resistance on the ground. As revolutionary socialists, as people that are serious about bringing about real and lasting change to this world, we must stand against all forms of oppression. We cannot see it as secondary or supplemental to our politics, but as a core of what we strive for. No borders, no walls, no barriers that divide workers. Fighting oppression is what it means to have solidarity with the working class.